I did one all about the Taylor Swift halftime show, and was pointing out
I remember that
all
one.
of the like
Signs.
signs and symbols. Or no, it wasn't Taylor Swift was there. It wasn't her halftime show.
Right. It was,
It was the Usher halftime show. But
yeah.
Taylor Swift was in attendance, and that was my inroad to be like, the reason Taylor Swift was there was to oversee this ritual that, and I purposely started with things that were like, all right, maybe this makes sense. And as the video went along, it was just like more and more
Just ridiculous
ridiculous.
rabbit
Oh, it was,
hole after
and
ridiculous rabbit hole.
but there is a sweet spot there where, and this is how I think some of my videos have done well, is like they hit multiple demographics.
Yeah.
And so you have the people that are like legitimately into all that stuff, but then you have the people that recognize that it's a joke. My favorite ones, and this is how I know if I put out a satire video, how I know it is doing well is if I have people in the comments like correcting me, like taking it seriously, but also
Yeah.
recognizing that I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm like, great, this hit.
All right, welcome to another episode of Two Dudes One God Pod. Today, Pat and I have a mega church pastor.
A mega
No,
church pastor.
he's not. He's not. You can tell he doesn't have the big tall tee and
Yeah.
like a sash. He doesn't have any of that.
In
Uh,
training, maybe like maybe I'll
Yeah.
get there at some
We're getting there.
there's going to be a career progression.
Yeah. 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 You heal people all over the place, like
Oh my
everything.
goodness.
Yeah.
If I ever start doing that, have me back on and maybe with a different tone.
Yeah,
Just
definitely.
Well, anyway, I'm going to be honest. I haven't seen any of your stuff because Pat didn't send me any because he didn't love me enough to like send it, because that's how you know if somebody loves you, or at least if I love you,
Yeah.
because I'm going to send you like 15 videos a day. Look at this, look at this.
I've been busy.
But I did like find your link tree and it motivated me to start a link tree for
Oh,
free. I don't know
nice.
if
Yeah.
it's going to be free, but like you're on there, you're like John the Messenger, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes,
Right.
sir.
Did you take the oath? Are you like not going to cut your hair anymore and you're going to
No,
eat
you
locusts
know
or
what? The beard is always a point of conversation. And I always have people asking, I've been a teacher, youth pastor, all those things, and it's like one of the number one questions I get, specifically from kids, is like, what do we have to do to get you to shave? And so I guess I have taken an oath in the sense that I promised my wife I would never shave it. That's pretty much it. And
Yeah.
that's what I tell the kids is like, if you can get my wife to agree to it, then maybe we can talk, but that's never going to happen. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty safe.
dude, I messed up trimming the other day
Yeah.
and I shaved it off. And
Oh,
It's
yeah.
I've learned enough that like I texted my wife and I was like, hey, I messed up. I shaved. I'm gonna send you a picture. She's like, it's fine. But like she came home from work and went got in bed and didn't talk to me.
yeah,
And I
it would probably be along those lines. And I do like I trim it up every once in a while, and that's like my biggest fear is that I'm gonna slip and then take a big chunk out, and then that's gonna be the
Yeah.
result. But so far so good. I've been able to keep it.
I have to say, yours grew back really quick. Like it didn't take no time. It was probably like 2 weeks
testosterone,
ago. Yeah.
no problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I love your content. It's something that is funny. It's something that it actually impacts in a positive way. I appreciate your going into teaching and everything like that. And I think it's very important for the church to have that available,
Mm.
whether it be from a church or from some guy in front of a camera that's doing the thing. But I'd like to know a little bit more about you, like kind of your testimony.
Sure.
Where did you start seeing God show up in your life, and just kind of go from there.
Yeah, so I grew up in a Christian home. I think one of the unique things with my story is my parents got married really young. They were
Hmm.
19. Both came out of homes that were uh, just had some tough stuff going on in their own ways. And so they were still kind of figuring out their faith in the midst of that, in the midst of getting married and even having me. Um, but grew up, I mean, they have always been super solid. But because of that, my dad was a truck driver. So he was gone a lot. And our church was not too far from where we lived. We were able to walk there. And so we spent a ton of time there. That was kind of an outlet for my mom. Did all of the Sunday morning, midweek, like anything that was going on there. So I was literally, born and raised in this church. And
Mm.
so I probably somewhat typical in terms of a kid growing up in church, like fairly early on. Um, I knew all the right answers and the right things to say at the right times. Um, I I accepted Christ whenever I was 6. And but when I give the short version of my testimony, what I say is I accepted Christ at 6. I started to recognize what that meant at 13, and I started to live that out around
Mm.
age 21. And so, it was never to me that Jesus wasn't real. I never questioned that. It was really just a process of my faith becoming my own,
Mm.
and more than just the answers, more than just kind of the head knowledge. Um, Something that affected me a lot growing up, and I still deal with to an extent today, is I was always really self-conscious, had really,
Mm.
low self-esteem. And that the older I get, the more I recognize how much that impacted my
Mm.
decision making and my life. And so in high school, it was kind of I would say probably stereotypical, like one way at church, another way at school. I
Yeah.
never got into like the partying or anything like that, but was just, was not living out my faith at all.
The double life.
Yeah. And it was, it's sad looking back on it because it wasn't like my friends didn't know. Like they knew that I went to church and I was involved there, but I wasn't showing them really what that life was, in school. So that all kind of came to a head. At the same time, to give you the dynamic, I was also like super involved in my youth group, to the extent I would say that was like part of my identity in an unhealthy way, was like, this is what I do. By the time I was a senior, I was like helping plan the or the youth retreat in the winter.
Mhm.
Um, and so that all kind of came to a head whenever I graduated. I went to a local school here in Western Pennsylvania called it's Indiana University of Pennsylvania, which is a known party school.
Mhm.
But I had family that lived in Indiana, so I was like, well, this will be great. When I got there, there were some people that I knew from my high school that went there, and so I just kind of latched on to them because I don't like meeting new people. I don't like
Yeah.
walking into a room of people I don't know and having to build relationships.
Mm.
So I kind of became closer with them and their friend group, and I would say that is where I really started to question some of the things I was taught, not in terms of scripture, or even the faith, but I always kind of had this idea from the way people talk that if people were like into partying and drinking and all that stuff, like they're not people that you're going to want to hang out with anyway.
Right.
And I always say, like, joking, but like I always pictured them as like a Bond villain, right? Where it's like they have a scar on their face and you're like, oh, I know I need to avoid them. Um, and so,
But Bond was like drinking and gambling and womanizing and
right.
speeding and
Yes.
killing and
Right. Yeah.
Yes. So it maybe that's the better thing. Maybe that's the better comparison, is like like I'm meeting these people and going, "Oh no, these guys are cool." Like and
Yeah.
legitimately cool. Not like cool because they're doing these things, but
Right.
like incredibly nice people.
You stopped looking at the things that you thought that they did was wrong and actually saw them
Yeah.
as people. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I did end up falling kind of into that scene,
Right.
like the kind of the party scene, but not because anyone that I was friends with pressured me to do that. Like they
Mhm.
were totally cool with me saying I'm not going to do that, I'm not, whatever, but it was the pressure that I put on myself
Yeah.
to want to be around them, whatever. So I spent a couple years there. In the interim, those summers I was working at a place again close to home called Pine Valley Bible Camp, which is a Christian camp for kids that typically can't afford to go to camp. So a lot of kids from like the inner city of Pittsburgh, surrounding areas, just tough, coming from tough situations. And so after my sophomore year, it was my third or fourth summer working there, um, and really just had a profound encounter with God that
Mm.
summer, and just really came face to face with what I was doing, where I needed to be, and that really kind of turned everything around for me. And so I left school, moved back home, was still going to college part time, didn't really know what I wanted to do. And that was trying to trying to think of the time frame there. I think it was the following summer, maybe 2 summers after, um, the woman that is now my wife and I started dating. And so another big thing with that was, and this kind of gets in even maybe into the content that I do too. I had this realization during that time because I was kind of starting back at square one, where I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I know that this is what I believe. What does that look like for me? Like in terms of, and you can take that in terms of like job, career, school, whatever, but just like day to day, what does that mean for me? And I came to this realization that if you were to take people within the church and people outside the church and ask them, what does a Christian look like? Even physically, like describe what
Mhm.
a Christian looks like, wears, whatever, you would probably have a pretty similar description from both sides. And I had, I just had this moment of like, I don't want that. Like I don't want to be, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't want to fit into that. Like I want to
Yeah.
be able to be, I want to be approachable, and I
Mhm.
want the gospel to be approachable. Um, and so my wife and I started dating. We met at the camp. We had worked together for I think 5 or 6 summers before we started dating. Um,
All at the same camp?
yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So by the time we were done, she spent 10 summers there.
Wow.
And I was there for 8,
So many
I think.
people meet their wives at Christian church camps.
Dude,
Yeah.
listen, and this is what I'll say. I'll come back to my story in a
So
second, but
many.
it is my parents met at a summer camp, and this is what I say. This is what I say. I tell people this. Don't go with that intent. That should
Right.
not be the intent. But also, like if you are serving, and you are legitimately serving and you are there to, work for what God has for you, also keep your eyes open. Because the
Yeah.
especially at this camp, like it's draining. I mean, like
Yeah.
the kids that we're working with, it's 24/7, and so it's just it's nonstop. And so you really get to see people for who they are in these situations, and you get to
Yeah.
see them serving. I joke with people like, my wife, she saw me cry before she knew what my favorite color was. Like
Yeah.
we kind of did that backwards, and so yes, I mean, I will always tell people, like, if you can find a solid Christian camp, um for you or to send your kids to work or whatever, like it's an incredible experience.
Well, I think
Um
like our pastor, his wife met at camp. Our youth and children's pastors met
At a
at
camp.
camp
Yeah.
at the same camp. And this camp is crazy. I went last year
Yeah.
for the first time. I'm going to go again this year as a sponsor. And like,
It's
my
wild.
wife rode a steer for like 3 seconds. I mean, like,
Oh yeah. It's called cow camp.
that's
yeah,
awesome.
Yeah.
half of the games that they play, like the kids are like, "Are you sure we can do this? I don't think we should do this." And
That's
people
it.
break
Yeah,
bones
that's
every year.
fantastic.
I mean,
We can do
Yeah.
it.
but I was listening to you talk about, you know, inner city kids that can't afford to go to camp, and I'm like, dude, we've got one right here. It's like $5,000 to send your kids to.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't afford that. I
Yeah.
can't even afford the camp we're gonna go
Yeah.
to, and it's
Which
cheap.
one is that?
Pine Cove, Lily.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah, it is a really cool thing. Actually, we're still connected there. My wife is actually the office administrator there
Uh,
now.
that's
Um,
cool.
and so it is such a the family that founded it has created such a cool culture there. And it is I forget exactly what it is right now. I think that families have to commit to like 25, $50, something like that. It depends it depends on the
Yeah, it's
income,
like a
to
sliding
qualify for
scale.
things.
Yeah.
But I mean it's all based on donors,
Mm,
and legitimately, and I've joked quite a bit through social media about how churches and ministries use funding.
mhm.
And this is a just an incredible testament to a ministry that's saying we're going to use what God gives us for this ministry. And again, like, it's great for the kids, also I mean, incredible for the staff working there
Yeah.
too. And it was so eye-opening for me to see just other things that are going on in the
Yeah.
world and just down the street that I just had no idea, and feeling what it really feels like to just completely pour yourself out
Yeah.
for this mission. And I mean, there was a half joke, kind of running joke that it's like we would get done on a Friday evening, we would be back Sunday afternoon and legitimately be like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. Like, I'm still not recovered from last week.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm a huge proponent of Christian camping, whether it is, wherever it falls on the spectrum in terms of
Mhm.
who they're serving and things like that. But there's something about just getting out of your norm, and
Yeah.
going out, and whether you're camping or working, that I think is just, incredibly important. Um,
Yeah. I worked on a couple of camps. I worked at, it doesn't matter their names. I worked on a couple of camps, and it was an opportunity for you to get to serve and, like, in a professional way as an adult.
yeah,
I think it's important for people who are coming into, college years and everything like that, go and get that experience with, I mean, cleaning dishes at dinner time, washing horses or setting up ropes and all that kind of stuff, because you learn to hone those work skills at the same time while you're getting to pour out into these
yeah,
kids. And it's such an important thing, because you take those skills that you learn and take them elsewhere.
yeah,
And I think that, if they're done right, then people see that and people
yeah.
appreciate that, who don't even realize how much they appreciate it.
I still use things that I learned, even phrases that I used
Mhm.
as a counselor and head counselor, like running the program. I still use that with my kids,
Yeah.
like, and I didn't even recognize that at the time. But I mean,
Hmm.
honestly, if you think about it, I mean, whenever I was counseling, we would have 8 to 10, it would be me and a co-counselor. We would have 8 to 10 10-year-old boys from the inner city that we
Yeah.
were responsible for the whole
Yeah.
week. And so you run into things where it's like, all right, I got to figure out how to deal with this situation. I got to figure
Hmm.
out how to command respect and
Yeah.
give respect, and with that, and to your point, you're doing all of those things, but you're doing all of those things in community. So you're
Hmm.
not just doing it on your own, but you're also recognizing, oh, this is what this looks like
Yeah.
when the body of Christ comes together, this is what it's supposed to look like. And we had people from all different denominations and areas and things like that,
Mhm.
and none of that mattered. Like,
Yeah.
none of that mattered because we were all there, for the same thing. So yeah, so that was a huge, I mean, just actually, we took the summer off, the summer that we got married. The following summer, the first full year we were married, that summer we went back and
Mhm.
served when we were married there. So yeah, so that was, I tell people that's where I grew up spiritually. Like,
Yeah.
that's where I started to really learn those things. And so yeah, so we got married. Actually, that summer that we served, I think it was my second year. at another local camp that had asked me the year before to come in and speak for them for a week, be the chapel speaker for the week. And so we went and did that that summer, and I got done with it, and I said to my wife, I think I'm supposed to go into youth ministry. And it was something that we had talked about, but I was just never felt like I was really ready for or called to or whatever. And a huge testament to her. And this has been a running thing throughout our marriage. We've had a lot of different transitions and things like that. And I told her that, and she looked at me and said, "Okay, you know." And so I sent resumes everywhere, Florida, Michigan, California, Texas, like all over the place, and ended up in Central Ohio, which is hilarious because I mean, it was like a running joke in our youth group growing up that like we couldn't stand Ohio. We hated driving through it, and so went there. Had our first son when we were there. That was a it was a good experience for my wife and I, in terms of going out, being on our own, away from family.
Yeah.
It was really difficult. The church that I was in, it- kind of in a position where they thought that things were going well and healthy, and um, as soon as I got there, there were some things that kind of blew up. Not having anything to do with me. I did
Yeah.
not, I didn't kick the door down and start changing things or anything, but
Yeah.
so that was hard. We didn't really have much of a community out there, and just had to learn. Yeah, just had to learn some lessons, some ministry lessons. I would say the hard way.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, in hindsight, was really good. It was really good for us. So while we were there, we had my oldest son and then my oldest daughter. We were there for just about 2 years, so not super long. That ended somewhat abruptly, and we moved back to Western PA. I ended up finishing my degree at that point. So I didn't finish my undergrad until I was about 30, and was doing some other things in between there, and then after I got my degree, became a high school uh, Bible teacher at a local Christian school.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and that was, uh, I would say that was life changing for me. I was excited to do it, but didn't really know how it would go. Um, and once I started, uh, it just things just kind of clicked. I was like, man, I
Mhm.
love this, and I had
Yeah.
been speaking different places at that point, so I knew that I enjoyed teaching in that aspect. But just really loved the day-to-day relationship building, the teaching, like kind of everything that came along with that. And at that point, we had been through quite a bit of transition. We had moved a couple times at that point, and so it felt like, oh, we're in a spot where this could be like longer term. We were excited about that. And then after my second year, the middle of that, actually near the end of that summer, the school shut down,
Mm.
and we were just kind of back to square one. Um, I, I, my wife and I both started subbing at the local school district, just to try to keep bringing money in. And then that spring is when COVID hit and
Mm.
all of the schools shut down. And so we were kind of
Yeah.
done with that. And so there were a lot of things that happened in that time. I worked a few different places, but the closing of the school was really, really difficult. And then I didn't recognize how difficult it was until I was a couple years removed from it. But again, it was something that I had really, I think, put a lot of my identity in. And
Right.
so I didn't know what to do there. And so that started really kind of a 5 year process of working different places, that were okay, but weren't, I wouldn't say they were callings. They were like we were just really praying for the next thing. And then this past year, about a year and a half ago, I accepted another youth director position. Um,
Okay.
and that's where I'm at now. And so we have 4 kids, and living in Western PA, and actually in a place where we're kind of settled in now, I think,
Mm.
at least for um, for the short term and potentially longer term too. So we're excited to be where we're at, and it's been our motto. This will give you a peek into it, but our motto for our marriage has been, we can do anything for a year. Like we can, if we need to do this for a year, we can do that.
Yeah.
It definitely has not been the typical like, all right, I'm going to do this and she's going to do this, and then we're going to do this for the next 40 years, and then that's going to be great.
Yeah.
A lot of different jobs, a lot of different moves, and my prayer through all of that has been that God would just make the next thing so clear that I can't screw it up. And
I love that.
that's
That,
that's what he's done. He's answered that. And so
Yeah.
we're incredibly thankful.
Yeah, our buddy Nick, when he prays at the end of the prayer, he says, "God, we trust you."
Yeah.
Like I'm like, oh,
Yeah, that was-
I get it, but
yeah, that was such a life-changing prayer in my life, was like, hey, I trust you. I know what you're going to do,
Well, and I'm again, a lot of, I mean, there's been a lot of difficult things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And, but I'm so thankful to be able to look back on those things and specific stories of like, just being in a really low place, and then seeing how God used that, and I recognize and I feel blessed in that way, because there are a lot of people that I know that haven't experienced that, and that they do, and it's a blessing in its own right to, to have a job where you're secure and you're doing that and that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And like that's a blessing, but there are people that haven't necessarily experienced what that is, to be like, I don't know what are we going to do now. And so
Yeah.
it's been great for my wife and I when we have experienced some of those things, whether it's financial or relational or whatever it is, to go, listen, God has brought us through all of these things, like he's going to continue to show up. And so it's been great to kind of have those markers in our life together to be able to go back to.
how old were you when you got married?
24.
Pretty
So
young.
Yeah.
yeah, so we met when we were 16, 17. And yeah, fairly young, and again, I think that's always a part of it, is like, no matter what age you get married, you're like, okay, we have to figure out life together now,
Yeah.
and so that was a big thing for us too.
Well, it sounds like y'all have actually known what a real blessing from God is, a lot of your content is, kind of nudging at the whole God only blesses you with finances, with Lamborghinis, with, these big houses and everything like that. But it sounds like y'all have been able to recognize what the actual blessing of God is. And, obviously your ministry is kind of spun off from there. That's apart from your actual ministry, like with youth and everything. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, I mean, I never really thought of it that way. I guess there probably is something subconscious there a little bit,
mhm.
where it's like, man, it almost makes me sad to go to have people think like, oh, this is what blessing is, like, or
Yeah,
this is what this, specifically what this
it
looks like.
cheapens it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that that's what people probably don't, and that's why I enjoy doing stuff like this, to have the longer conversation, to kind of explain some of those things. And I get this all the time from people that's like, oh, you're this take is for attention, or you just don't like this or don't like that. Like, there's a legitimate heart behind that. And I appreciate
Right.
what you said earlier, like, my what I enjoy doing is using, at times using the humor or using the satire to legitimately point out some things that I think are issues. And it's not from a, oh, I just don't like this person standpoint. It is like, well, it's sad to me and also a little offensive that this is how you are portraying the gospel, or this is how you're portraying God. And so that's the place where it comes from. And
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. I have to check myself on the other side of it too. Like, there are times that I'm like, oh, this would be hilarious, or there are videos that I've made, that I've been like,
Well,
probably,
let's keep those in the drafts.
yeah, and
Those are for me.
yes, yeah, maybe I'll send this to a select few, but I won't put that out there. So yeah, I mean, there's like legitimate thought that goes into that, and and I enjoy doing it, you know, and that's the other part of it too, is like I mean, it's a lot of, I think you'll find a lot of creators that will say this, but I mean, I started doing social media stuff during the quarantine.
Yeah.
It was
So
just
did
like,
I.
I
Yeah.
needed to find something to do. And similar to teaching, it was kind of like, oh, I'll kind of check this out. And I started doing this and I was like, oh, this is like a legitimate outlet to,
Yeah.
you know, to do these things. And again, I've always enjoyed speaking places. I've always enjoyed making people laugh like that to my detriment at points.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was something I was like, oh, I can kind of do this and recognizing, you know, even what I said earlier about like what do Christians look like? Where it's like, oh, if I can come at it from a place of this is not the only thing that a Christian creator is,
Yeah.
and to be able to use satire and humor and you know and things like that. So um, yeah, so I've had a blast doing that, and I have been blessed with the relationships that I've been able to build with people through that, and just some of the opportunities that I've had with people, and so it's been a lot of fun for me.
Well, I'll say it's very difficult because, like, it seems like anytime you put anything about Jesus out there, the algorithm does not like that for whatever reason. Like, it is very strange to me how often, like I'll go to post something about Jesus and then I'll post something about my dog. And then the dog always
Yeah,
picks up everything. And it's
yeah.
always so frustrating. And, you know, I'll see like guys like y'all who are getting good following and like I'm thinking in my head, how many times have they posted something and like nothing has come about of it, you know?
Yeah, it is. It's a game. I mean, um that is definitely, I mean, it's definitely frustrating at points, especially for me, because there are people that put a ton of time into their videos and scripting it and you
Yeah.
know editing and all of that stuff. I don't do a ton of that. But when I've been most frustrated is when I have done that and it's done absolutely nothing. I
Yeah.
was like, I just put 3 hours into, you know, but I actually the account that I have on TikTok right now is actually my second account. It's been
Hmm.
probably 3 years, 3.5 years since I switched. But the reason that I did it was the first account that I had, I didn't start out really making explicitly Christian content. Like it was
Right.
just kind of funny stuff, whatever. And I was kind of sprinkling things in here and there, which was great. But I recognized that whatever following I was gaining was from these videos that were doing really well that were not
Right.
Christian in nature,
Yeah.
or and not explicitly Christian. And so then it was like things just kind of plateaued because people were
Hmm.
like, well, wait a second, this isn't really what I signed up for, and you know, whatever. So yeah, it's so hard. And the other side of it though too is like you also have to recognize that these are just the rules, you know, and so that I see some Christians that will post stuff that like obviously is going to get flagged because of the rules that, and then they're like, oh, what? I can't, you know, like, well,
I'm
no.
being persecuted. This
Right,
is
yeah.
my cross to
Like
bear.
all good. Like if you want to post that stuff, that's fine, but if it doesn't get pushed, there's a reason for that, you
Yeah,
know,
don't
and
be
so
mad about that.
so
Yeah.
there is a sense in which you have to be strategic a little bit in
Hmm.
that way. But it is, you know, it's hard. I try not to get into that mindset too much. Um, as far as like with if my stuff legitimately isn't getting pushed out, then that's super frustrating. But I've tried to stop myself from like going to other people's pages to see, you know, where their following is at or, you know, things like that. And also am super excited for people that I'm friends with on there that do have big followings that are reaching a lot of
Hmm.
people that I know are legitimately like just have a great heart for the Lord.
Yeah.
And that was, I mean, that was something that I did not expect whatsoever whenever I started doing that, was just the community that I found
Mhm.
within that. And people that I legitimately like, if I was having a tough time, I know I could call up, you know, and they would legitimately help me out. So yeah, it's a crazy world. I mean, I've said the best thing about social media is that anyone can get on and post anything they want, so you never know what you're going to see. And the worst thing about social media is that anyone can get on and post anything
Yep.
they want, and so you never know what you're going to see. And it has opened my eyes to a lot out there, even under the Christian umbrella, that I was like,
Mhm.
geez, oh man, I did not even know that this was a thing. And so it's
Yeah.
sharpened me a little bit that way too, like to know kind of how to deal with those things.
Yeah. I know whenever I was a kid, like the weirdest thing that I had ever heard of was the people with snakes. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But
Yeah.
now I'm seeing stuff that's coming out on social media, and I'm like, what the heck? Like those people carrying snakes were like nothing compared to this
Yeah.
wild stuff.
Yeah.
Like, and it seems like more and more that gets perpetuated. You get different factions of Christianity that start to develop within the church, and you'll see like um people who are all about the prophesying and all about the healing. And don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here saying that healings don't happen, like by
Sure.
any means, but I
But
have
you usually don't fall down and convulse on the ground when it happens.
exactly, like it's one of those things where you start to waken up to what the truth is and what it's not.
What was it like Wes? What's his name? You know, that's a wild story.
Oh yeah, Wes Huff. Yeah,
Wes
like
Huff.
Oh
that's
yeah.
like
I watched
his
that
healing.
long version and I was like, bro, that's crazy.
Yeah, like that's that I consider that a legitimate healing,
But I don't think it happens in like stadiums when they
right.
win.
And it quite frankly, like with like all the Todd Whites, which I'll be honest, I was about to sign up for his school. I've tried to sign up for his school twice. And then like I just got awakened up to some things that it's like, all right, you've got to you kind of got to take your path, and you can't
Yeah.
just like go for what everybody is going for. And like there's been so many people who have had their legs what is it, healed,
Lengthened.
lengthened 3 inches longer or something like that. And it's like, okay, listen, there must be a pandemic of people with legs shorter than one other, and or there's a gimmick, or there's something going on. And no one ever thinks to say, okay, why aren't these people like going to hospitals? Why aren't they going to these areas? And I'm not saying that, again, I'll say it 100 times, I'm not saying that I don't think that healings don't happen, but it's not in the context that that certain sects of Christianity perpetuate.
Yeah.
Usually they follow it up with the whole, you need more faith. You know, if you would just have more faith, then this wouldn't be so bad. And it's
Yeah.
like, all right, well, not everything needs a healing, because you'd
Yeah.
be surprised how many gifts come from our ailments. I mean, it is in the Bible, right?
Mhm.
Paul kind of talked about it a little bit.
Yeah.
And people think that, Christianity is something that's going to make us comfortable. It's going to make us driving around in nice cars and all that kind of stuff. And don't get me wrong, God does bless, but he's the one who chooses to do so.
Oh, I mean, Jesus healed a bunch of people and then left, what is it, John or
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, is that who was it that is that from The Chosen?
It's probably from The Chosen.
Okay.
I'm probably making this up.
Yeah, probably. But
I've got a question though.
Yeah.
Because when we started this deal, this podcast, we, you know, I wondered if naming it Two Dudes One God, and then I didn't really do a bunch of research. It turns out there's a bunch of podcasts named Two Dudes something.
yeah.
You know,
Oh.
I didn't know, but I was worried that it would limit viewership, and like we've got an episode that's going to come out in 2 or 3 weeks, and like there's probably 750 cuss words in this 4-hour episode. We interviewed a tattoo artist, and he like, I just threw my hands up. I'm like, I'm gonna put the purge warning sign in the beginning
Sure.
of the episode and say, if you don't want to hear it, just don't listen to it. But
Yeah.
Sure.
and like here, like we're kind of in the buckle of the Bible Belt down here in East Texas.
Yeah.
And so I see a lot of, I mean, this is a long question, but like I see parents that go, well, our kids aren't going to go to public school. They're going to go to a Christian school. And I'm
Yeah,
like, cool. But it's those kids whose parents, for some reason, buy them kegs and let them ride jet skis all weekend at their house. And it's
yeah,
almost like they're hoping that the school's going to instill some kind of morals or parent the kids for them.
yeah,
And I'm kind of like, well, I'm going to send my kids to public school because we're supposed to be a light to the world. You know, like
sure,
Yeah.
my kids believe and like they should go to school where that, you know what I mean? Like, but then I
sure.
see it on the other side. I'm like, yeah, there is some crazy stuff. Like
Mhm.
we just had graduation. My daughter's a senior and like they did like a seniors award still. And like there were kids like walking up and getting their scholarship packets and then like giving the finger as they walk across the stage. And I'm like, okay,
All right.
well,
Good for you.
you know, and
Yeah.
I'm no saint, you know, but I just feel like there's a time and a place. Maybe that's a cultural deal. I probably
Sure.
don't want to get into the rest of that. But my question is like we've got a buddy. Yeah, I know. Long question. My question is like we've got a buddy that they've got a couple, like he's got what Casey Parker and then his buddy, what's his name? Fuck it, Puckett. I don't know, whatever his name is, his buddy, Ethan.
Ethan.
They got the Thunder Sons ministry.
Oh, I don't. I've never met that.
I've never
guy.
met that guy either.
Yeah.
His last name, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. It's like PHUC. I don't know. Anyway,
Good Asian name.
Yeah, be
He's
careful
a-
with it.
he's a white guy. I don't,
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he is.
Anyway, they've got a thing called Thunder Sons Ministry, and they're like really actively going to AI with their script or with whatever they put in the video and like coming up with how to name and hashtag. They're like real intentional about that. And it's clearly a ministry, right? And ours is called Two Dudes One God Pod. And like I'm like at 25 hours a week right now, editing, booking, you know, figuring this stuff out. And I just went, I'm done. I just throw the video into this thing and it clips it and it
Yeah.
titles it and names it and describes it. And a lot of it's really wrong. Like AI has kind of missed the nuance
Just
of what we're
misses
doing.
the concept.
And I'm like, maybe somebody will stumble on it that needs to see it, you know, because I don't have, you know, like God's either going to do something with it or not. But like,
Sure.
I have gotten into like, dude, I'm really, we're working hard on this deal.
Yeah.
We're doing
Yeah.
it because we felt called to do it. And then like some weird clip that doesn't have anything to do with anything will get 3,000 views. And like the one that was really good will get 3 views.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't understand it, you know, and
Do you
like-
think there's demons in AI?
you know, like I get that there's like, you know what I mean? Like I get it that like maybe we get shadow banned or maybe the right person hasn't seen it and shared it with their following yet or whatever it is. But I was just gonna kind of get your take on that because it sounds like you're like, you know, you made a conscious decision to step away from like a less or a more secular account and you post on your own deal and then like
Yeah.
my attached question is have you monetized in any way, you know, and like if so what are you doing with that? Because you know we've got like a buy me a coffee link and literally nobody has ever sent 1 penny, you know, and like we're just
Sure.
spending money producing, buying equipment, you know, editing. We're just figuring it out.
Yeah.
I don't have an expectation to make money, but it would be awesome if
I want you to get paid.
I mean
I mean-
I don't need to get paid. I guess that's not the point, but it would be cool if it was self-supporting. you know?
Sure. Yeah, and
Um,
there's nothing wrong with that in my opinion. I've run across a lot of things on social media where people kind of demonize that. Like if you're making any sort of money from what you're doing um on social media as a Christian creator, then that's wrong. And I see that in a lot of different I see the same symptom in a lot of different places. And I'm about to do such a stereotypical Christian social media thing. But I really see it the same way that it's the same thing in my eyes that the Pharisees did, where you have this line that you shouldn't cross. So in this situation, the line is I'm only doing things on social media and saying things in order to make money or in order to get views or in order to get followers. That is wrong, right? So people will then take the line that is legitimate and they move it back to you should not make any money through social media if you're a Christian influencer. And they equate
Yeah.
those two things as they say those two things are the same. Um, I had someone you on my link tree, I have my PayPal on there. No one's ever used it. I have never said in a video, hey, by the way, my PayPal's in there. I've never done that. But I've also, the reason that I did it, and I kind of came around on this, was there have been times where I wanted to bless someone or send someone something and they didn't have it.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, listen, if people are wanting to do that, then that's okay. Like I don't think
Mhm.
that that's a wrong thing. I'm in on TikTok, I'm in the like the creator fund. So if my
Mhm.
video does well, I get a certain it is minimal. I mean, you know, but again, it's like I don't see anything wrong with that. And I think in your situation too, it's like if you're putting in the work for something,
Yeah.
then I don't see anything wrong with being able to use that money to help yourself do that thing. Um,
Right.
you know, and it's so funny that the way that people do this only with only with Christianity, like
Yeah.
with specific things. Like it would
Yeah.
be like if a guy enjoyed, you know, let's say there was a small group of guys, you know, Christian guys that they went out golfing every every Saturday, you know, and they were somehow someone approached them and said, "Hey, do you want to come play? We'll pay you this amount of money." Like, are
Mhm.
they going to go, "No,
No, we
that's
can't
not
do
what this
that.
is about. I'm not,
Yeah.
you know, like it's a ridiculous notion." And now, don't get me wrong. On the other side of it, and I won't, but I could name names of people that I'm like, that's what they're doing. They are doing this to get the following, to get
Yeah.
the you know, to get the interaction, to push their videos out. And don't and honestly, like there are strategies that I have used to try to get people to engage with videos, not in like a rage bait, I want to
Right.
argue with you about this stupid thing, but like, yeah, I'm gonna use a mic and good lighting and I'm gonna, you know, do whatever. But it's interesting. There were a couple things that you guys said that I think are always. I think there's a the heart of the issue in all of them, where you know when you're talking about how what ministries are doing and what they're putting out there and how they're functioning, when you're talking about whether you know your kids are homeschooled or a Christian school or a public school, how you're using your you know your social media, and this is what makes Christianity difficult. And I talk to my kids about this all the time that all of these things we're talking about are external. Those are all things that we are seeing other people do, that they are seeing from us. And Christianity, literally at the heart of it, is internal. It's about what is going on inside. And so, you know, when you look at a ministry, a Christian creator, where you're going to school, all of these things, you have to come back to what the heart of that is. And so I can't look at someone who's making money off of social media and say that is inherently wrong. But if
Yeah.
they have something going on inside saying, I'm posting this content not to further the gospel or not to, and I, I don't even think that you know, I don't think that every piece of content has to point to the gospel either, but there is a heart of what am I doing this for? What's the end
Right.
goal here? Um, and so and that's something, you know, influence and popularity is a heck of a drug.
Mhm.
And you know that so I think that comes into play too. And I've had to check myself on that. I think that it's a huge issue within the church at large, and especially when you're looking at a lot of the mega churches and celebrity pastors and worship groups and all of these things, is looking at what are they actually doing here?
Mhm.
Why are they doing what they're doing? And is it pointing people to the gospel, or is it pointing people to them using the gospel to do it?
Yeah.
And that's some, I mean, there's nothing, you know, I haven't spoken for any like massive groups, but you know, let's say if I'm at a camp or at a church and I'm speaking for 100 people, I will tell you right now, there is nothing like standing up in a large group in front of a large group of people and knowing that you have them. Like they are
Mhm.
listening to what you are saying. And I can easily see how that could be a driving factor. Um,
Mhm.
but I think within all of those things, that I mean, that's really what I'm trying to do with a lot of my content is like, let's look at what's actually going on. You know, let's look at scripture, let's use some discernment, and at the very least ask the questions. Even if you don't agree with me, if someone walks away from it going, you know what, I paid attention to the worship lyrics at church this week more than I ever have because
Yeah.
of what John talked about. And I think still think he's completely wrong, then that,
Mhm.
then that's okay with me.
Yeah. I think it's important for the strategy side of things, because it seems like churches want to build up hype, want to just, it's such a weird thing to me. Like, it's something that whenever I see um people like flocking to these things, or listening to, like, just like some, and I'm not trying to name names. I could definitely drop all the names right now that irritate the crap out of me, but I'm not trying to be rebuking. I'm not, that's not my place. You know what I
Sure.
mean? Like, I'm not trying to be facetious or anything like that. But it seems like they're all for popularity, trying to be more relevant, trying to be, stay in the pocket of, let's keep doing this. And it, honestly, it's, to me it seems like a deception whenever the pride of man like gets in. and
Yeah.
and I really don't think that a lot of the people out there that are doing the content are doing it to be facetious or even trying to use, but it's like they have no idea because they don't know the scripture. I mean, what is it? In Amos, it says that my people perish because they know me not.
Hmm.
And there's ways to know God. There's ways to know his character. There's ways to know the truth without having some burning bush revelation put in front of you. It's, there's a method to it where you just go to the word. I mean, use some discernment. And I'm not sitting here saying that somebody has to be in their word every single day, because I'm not. Like, I'm not someone that goes to my Bible every single day, but I am someone who is always pondering the scriptures. I'm
Yeah.
someone who's always like thinking back, as, or thinking in a current situation, like, what would Jesus have me do? What does the Holy Spirit prompt me to do in
Yeah.
this moment right now? Because there's obviously, there's moments whenever things come up where the Holy Spirit will, can say, nudge, whether it's like speaking to the ears of the heart, where maybe we are supposed to say something. But then there's also, we know who God is and we know his character. And it doesn't have to be like God says, Pat, put the chips in that person's, basket or whatever. It's a case of, I know his character, and therefore I don't need to have instruction in this very moment like I'm a robot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the more that we actually start to see God in our lives, the more that we start to look for him, that's whenever we have those opportunity to be like God in the sense of his character. So, it's one of those things where the deception and the lack of discernment, I'm not sitting here saying that, we have to know every single thing, but it is something that kind of is self-explanatory in my mind, um, whenever it comes to
Yeah.
scripture.
Yeah. I think I've spoken on this a few different times. I'll just tell a quick story. The Whenever I was in Ohio, I had the opportunity
Ohio.
I had an opportunity to preach a couple times. The church that we were in just had a speaker into the nursery. My son was, an infant at that point, and whenever I got to the nursery after preaching after the service, the woman that was in there said he was great the whole time. He was kind of doing his thing, and she said, as soon as your voice came over the loudspeaker, like he shot right up, like he knew, and I've used that as an illustration to go, if we understand what God sounds like, and I'm not talking like audibly, I'm saying like if we are in his word and we can, it's what you're saying, we can understand the character of God, the way that he works. If we know that voice, then when we hear other voices that are not him, we'll be able to pick those out. And I think it's difficult for people, whenever I talk about, and I, you know, uh, whenever I talk about some of these guys, specifically the kind of celebrity pastors, um, man, it's like they have kind of built an army for themselves. And it really doesn't matter what they do. It's people are just going to back them because that's what they're supposed to do. And so I think those are the hardest people to really talk with, because if that's the only voice that you recognize or understand, then you're not going to know what I'm talking about. But again, it gets back to what I said earlier. Like it makes me sad, but it also is somewhat offensive. Like
Mhm.
if you this is how this is the God that I have a relationship with. This is the Savior that I love. And if you are representing him in a way that is not biblical and not in the way that we are supposed to, then yeah, I'm going to have an issue with that. Um, and that being said, it's also led to some great conversations with people, and that's another one of the reasons why I do it. And I'll drop a couple names because yeah, this is your podcast, and you have to protect yourself a little bit. But like whenever I've done a couple videos on Bethel,
Yeah.
and their worship, specifically their worship, the worship stuff that they put out, and I've had people like tell me I had no idea. I've never heard this.
Yeah.
I had no idea, and so for all of the other stuff that I have to deal with that, I think sometimes we get inside our bubble so much that we're like, oh, this is just a known fact that these things are happening. and
Right.
and by design, people don't know those things.
Hmm.
And so I've seen the fruit of that in terms of, again, just kind of getting people to think about things in a different way, even if they don't change their opinion. But it comes back to what you're saying in terms of like just trying to speak truth, and not using that in a way that's like, that can be a very K-Love Christian radio phrase to use. But to take the truth of Scripture and to just put that into, what I'm doing, and whether that's on social media or just, kind of day-to-day life type stuff.
Yeah.
Coach Rock
Yeah.
went to
Absolutely.
Bethel in Reading.
Oh, yeah, he
That was
did.
his church there.
That's right.
Yeah, I saw they went back. So my stepson's jujitsu coach is from
Oh, wow.
Brazil
Yeah.
and met his wife at Bethel, and
Mm.
now they live here and teach jujitsu. But I saw a video, when he's back today.
Yeah.
He's back, but they were gone for 11 days. They've got like people on stage dancing with flags, and I mean it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I'm a Reformed guy. I'm in a Presbyterian church, and so there's definitely some of that leaks through. I think a lot of times people will come at me from that side of it, where it's like, well, they're just Pentecostal, they're just, whatever, that's why you don't like them. It's like, no, that's not what it is. Like I have friends through social media that are Pentecostal, like we disagree on things, but I don't question where they're at, in their
Right.
faith.
Right.
But the video that actually did really well that I did, what, last January, I think it was, maybe I forget exactly when, but like they had Kenneth Copeland come speak, like do a sermon at their
Oh my
church.
God.
And like Bill Johnson, who's the founder of Bethel, like gave this rousing endorsement of him. And I literally said in the video, like, this might be the last one that I do about this, because if this doesn't, like, if this doesn't get through to you, then I don't really know what else to say. Um, but that's part of it too, with these different ministries and different people, is like also looking who they're surrounding themselves with.
Yeah.
And there are certain things there that's like, yeah, this should be the final straw. And yeah, there's a lot going on there that just isn't good. And so again, a lot of people don't know that, and I think that's somewhat by design. And so that's where the social media can be used for good, I think, for all of the tough stuff that comes along with it.
Well, that's you may have just answered my next question, but it was, do you have a particular video or topic that's really gotten the most traction? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on how you define traction. Like the video that I've done that has done the best for me, was a video I did after, not this past Super Bowl, I think it was the one before. And these are some of my favorite videos to make, is the kind of the satire on the subject of um either like the end of the world, or
Mm,
like something being demonic, or
yeah.
whatever. So I did a video on, and I this was strategic. I put it up, I think it was like the next day. Um I did one all about the Taylor Swift halftime show, and was pointing out
I remember that
all
one.
of the like
Signs.
signs and symbols. Or no, it wasn't Taylor Swift was there. It wasn't her halftime show.
Right. It was,
It was the Usher halftime show. But
yeah.
Taylor Swift was in attendance, and that was my inroad to be like, the reason Taylor Swift was there was to oversee this ritual that, and I purposely started with things that were like, all right, maybe this makes sense. And as the video went along, it was just like more and more
Just ridiculous
ridiculous.
rabbit
Oh, it was.
hole after
And
ridiculous rabbit hole.
but there is a sweet spot there where, and this is how I think some of my videos have done well, is like they hit multiple demographics.
Yeah.
And so you have the people that are like legitimately into all that stuff,
Mm.
but then you have the people that recognize that it's a joke. My favorite ones, and this is how I know if I put out a satire video, how I know it is doing well is if I have people in the comments like correcting me, like taking it seriously, but also
Yeah.
recognizing that I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm like, great, this hit right where I need. So that did has done the best for me. I think on this account, I think that might be the only one that's hit 1 million views. There might have been one other one. But so on that side of things, like that did really well. I did another one that was similar to that during the eclipse.
Mhm.
That this I was very proud of this one. I did something that had the path of the eclipse, and I took about 10 minutes to make a very crude map of that was supposed to be where all of the newest Dollar Generals have been built in the last 5 years, and they were along the same path. And it was just like, what is going on here?
What?
So I really like, those are probably my favorite ones to do, is those types of things. But then I've had some do really well that were more serious.
Mm,
I did a response video that was touching the original video was just a real quick one touching on the issue of abortion. And like the idea of like, I think the original video was something to the extent of like, when did wanting to protect innocent people become controversial? And I
right.
didn't even mention abortion in the video,
Mhm.
but I had all of the kind of stereotypical responses to that, and I did a response to someone talking about like all of the kids that are in foster care, along those lines. That was again very straightforward, was not joking, anything like that, and that video did really well too, and
Yeah.
so um, I've been thankful to be able to have the reach like that. And again, getting to my point earlier, like a lot of times when I'm doing those videos, it allows me to maybe make a video that's supposed to be funny, humorous, whatever, but then I can take comments from those and do like legitimate, serious
Yeah.
responses to
Gotcha.
that, to go like, this is what this is where I'm at with this and all of that. So, yeah, I think that, I mean, the satire definitely usually does well for that reason, because you're hitting a couple different groups. Um, and but and a lot of them I worship, the stuff that I do on worship, there are ones there that have done well. More so because it starts a lot of debates in the comment section, which I don't
Yeah.
love, to be honest. It gets
Yeah.
tiring, and
It's
I'm like,
exhausting. Like,
well, it's exhausting. And then like a lot of times it's like I'll get on after a couple days if a video is doing well, and people are arguing in the comments about something that wasn't even in the
Completely, yeah.
video. Like they started there, and then so I'll do like a video on the halftime show, and then by the time I see the thread, it's like 57 comments long, and it's talking about like, you know, the original Greek manuscripts of something. And I'm just like, well, wait, what? How did we get here? So yeah, but I think those types of videos typically are the ones that have done better for me. And you know, and I'm with my new job and new situation, like my kids are homeschooled. This was our first year doing that. And so, you know,
Hey,
my schedule has just
congratulations.
been, yeah, thank you. My schedule has just been crazy, you know, and so much different than, so even posting, like I just haven't been able to do that as much recently. I haven't been able to be as consistent with it, but
So I've got a couple questions for you.
yeah.
Pat, hang in here with me, dude.
Okay.
Is the earth flat?
No.
Do you use iPhone or Android?
iPhone. But I will
Okay.
say this, I you know, I'm gonna make everyone mad on both sides with what I'm about to say.
Oh no.
I it I don't use the iPhone necessarily because I'm like, yes, this is so much better. I have continued to use the iPhone because I know how to use it. And I know,
Okay.
and so at this point, I'm like, I'm not learning anything else.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
if
You
so
you
just
have an
made the
iPhone,
right choice from the beginning.
if you have an iPhone, there's nothing wrong with that.
right,
An
yes.
Android phone,
Just
Yeah.
as
then
long as I
you
stay
need to
on the
get with it.
team. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah.
If you,
You're not gonna get off. And I tell
Yeah.
you what, if you went to an Android right now, you'd jump right back onto the team. Like
Yeah,
almost
well,
guaranteed.
and I've also done the thing where I'm like, there's one person in the group chat that has an Android, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, why are we
What?
doing this?
Why
You're
are
not
you
allowed to be in
here,
this
dude?
anymore.
I feel like
But
if your message shows up green on my phone, I feel like your life didn't go the way you planned.
yeah,
You know. Um, I lost it.
You lost the questions.
I had like three more that were pretty solid.
Yeah, we keep time.
No, they're gone.
Well, so obviously being in youth ministry, like youth is attacked on every format you can possibly imagine. Like it's something that is very much in your face. I mean, I've got a 12-year-old who is experiencing things that I never would have
yeah.
experienced at all. In youth ministry, what are some of the things that you've been like not like challenged with, but I guess what have you been challenged with?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's you know, it's definitely it's been interesting for me because you know, I was a youth pastor 10 plus years ago at this point. And so stepping back into it uh as a, you know, I was 37 at the time, 38 now. Yeah, a lot. I mean, not that I've been out of the culture or separated from it or anything like that, but you know, working with kids that are that age now, and just recognizing like, man, there is so much more going on than I dealt with whenever I was in high school, and kids are being confronted with things so much earlier. Um, uh, because of things like social media and things like that. So it's definitely I think just kind of getting my bearings was a challenge in terms of, you know, what do we need to touch on? What are things that kids are struggling with? I do enjoy, I mean, we talked about the camp earlier. From early on, I really felt called to do ministry for and with kids that were like me that grew up in the church. I think it's really easy a lot of times for parents and even the church as a whole to like just assume kids are doing well or are okay or going
Yeah.
to make good choices because they grew up in the church, you know. And so I think there are a lot of conversations that get missed in that. And a lot of my kids in my youth group are, you know, grew up in the church. A lot of them go to a private Christian school. And so maybe that's been the biggest challenge is like, um, how do I present this information or these lessons that for a lot of them they've heard a lot of this already and maybe multiple times and they've heard these passages from scripture maybe earlier today when they were at school. And so how do I present them in a way that is going to be approachable and is going to be practical and is going to be real? So yeah, I think that's been part of it. Um, and I think I don't know if it's a challenge for me, but just the willingness to approach those things, those difficult things. So I'll put a plug out there. We this whole past school year we went through. I taught through a book called um, 10 Questions Every Teen Should Ask and Answer About Christianity by Rebecca McLaughlin. And she's the same one. She wrote Confronting Christianity too. And so it's the same idea. There are 10 questions that, this one is written with teens in mind, 10 questions that you are either facing now or going to probably face at some point. And it kind of spans the spectrum from like theology based type things to the one chapter, the question that it's answering is why can't we just agree that love is love? And so we were able to get into some really, some really serious and some really deep conversations. And so again, I don't think it was a challenge necessarily. Like I don't mind that, but I think it was just um, figuring out how to do that in a way that makes sense, in a way that again is approachable. I've seen that done very poorly too, where it's like it kind of done as a shock factor type thing, or um, maybe the person, if you're hearing that from someone, some of those things from someone that you don't have a relationship with, that can be kind of
Right.
off-putting too, because it's hard to know exactly where they're coming from. So I think, yeah, I think just presenting those things in a way that is scripture based, is said in love, but is also getting in the face of, some of those issues. I think those that I'll tell you, we did a week that was specifically again on the topic of abortion, and I told them, at this point I've given a ton of talks at a ton of different places, camps, schools, churches, whatever, and I told them like that was my hardest week in terms of
Mm,
preparing something. It was the most difficult, it was the most draining, but I was also thankful for that, and I was thankful to be able to share that with them, uh, and uh, and to be able to approach those topics. So I think, yeah, just taking those concepts that a lot of them are familiar with and being able to break them down in a way that isn't necessarily new, but is
yeah.
in a way that they understand. I think that's been the difficulty so far.
Well, I think you nailed something there. As you said, you didn't have a relation. It's like you have to have the relationship first. I see these guys. There's been like this guy with like two PAs like walking around
Oh,
at
really?
Broadway in the Loop, and he's like, repent, he's just
Yeah,
yelling at people. I'm like, it's not a good look, no matter what side of the universe you live on.
Yeah.
yeah,
If you think we should kill babies after they're born, or if you think that all life is holy or valuable or whatever, probably nobody wants you yelling at them at a stoplight,
yeah, for sure.
and so and I think we see, Jesus developed a relationship and then said, come with me, and developed a
Yeah.
relationship and then taught them.
Yeah,
Um, so your current capacity at work is like youth, right? Like the
yeah,
so
that's the main job description. I
I'm
mean,
sure you got a lot of hats. I mean,
yeah,
I
I
know
mean,
how
there are
that.
other things that I do, and that I'm involved with. But yeah, that's the main thing I'm doing right now.
So where's the biggest area of opportunity there, and like where are you losing it, like I don't
Mm.
know. So I'm asking this from this perspective. Like I've been to a lot of bunch of churches. I grew up Southern Baptist, and
Mhm.
we currently go to a place that's pretty. I've never found another church like this, and I've heard people say that
Yeah.
before. But
Mm.
like the whole church was founded around a men's ministry, which is weird from the beginning. I mean, I feel like
Mhm.
there's maybe one or two other
Yeah, there's
churches
not
that could
many of them.
kind of say that, but like
Yeah,
legitimately, it was founded out of a men's ministry, and
Mhm.
it's very obviously directed towards men. There's a masculine presence around it,
Yeah.
yeah,
which I think is pretty abnormal. I think there's been a bunch of
for sure.
effemination of Jesus and church and like love is love, that kind of a deal.
Yeah,
Um, Especially when you get into like Methodism and some of the other anyway.
Yeah.
But I don't know a whole bunch. I just like I see what I see, and
yeah,
I'm like, that's weird. And so the idea around our church was like, if you get the man, you'll get the wife and the kids. but like I think traditionally churches, their biggest outreach, their biggest on ramp to membership has been children's ministry, not teen ministry, but kids
Mhm.
and women. And at the same time, I don't know that there's ever been a women's ministry that was ultimately successful. And once the kids start driving here in East Texas, once they're 16, 17, they're done
Yeah.
coming to
Yeah.
that stupid church deal, like they want there's other things going on. And
Yeah.
we've, I think, are trying to actively engage with like the guys 17 to 22 to try to kind of keep them around so they don't run off and make all the same mistakes we did,
Definitely. Yeah.
But like I just wanted to get because I mean you have a unique position. I mean, I would argue it's probably the most important role that you could have in a religious organization,
Mm.
and that's interfacing, developing, and growing, and having a relationship with the next generation. And
Yeah.
so, what struggles are you seeing? What are y'all doing? How are y'all implementing? You know,
Yeah, so I am really fortunate. The situation that I stepped into is just a really solid one. They've set me up for success there, which is awesome. The culture at the church is just really, really solid. And in a way, kind of similar to what you said, where it's like it's tangible there. And you can tell that it's a community of people that legitimately care about one another. Um, and I think uh, a thread through all of that is we have really solid men in our congregation. And I don't think that that is a coincidence. And it's something that I recognize that the church that I was at in Ohio did not have. And so I do think that that was a part of, some of the issues that they were having there. Um, so I think in terms of opportunity, and maybe this kind of a challenge too, it's all wrapped up into one is um, trying to build that, or trying to build that culture within the youth ministry. And we're off to a good start with that. I think that I was again set up for success there as well. But now, I mean, now it was I guess it was probably like this whenever I was going through high school, but kids are involved in just so much that it's like
Yeah. They
trying
can
to
get
get it.
distracted by so much right now.
Yeah, and so trying to take it from youth group is something that I enjoy doing. It's a great thing on Sunday night, whatever it is, to like really having buy-in to it and taking some ownership of it. Um, and yeah, so I think that's kind of the big thing. More like right now, one of the big challenges is this past school year, we were probably it's a smaller group. We were probably averaging 12 to 15 kids on a Sunday night. The class that's coming in now in a couple weeks into seventh grade, that my oldest son is actually in, it's like they have like 13 to 15 kids on their own. It's like this huge class. And so it's kind of in the talk of building that culture is how do we do that well while bringing in this new crop of students that are going to be the majority. And to your point, like how do I take we have a few kids that are going to be like 10th through 11th or 10th through 12th grade. um, how do I keep them engaged? How do I have them take some ownership, take on some responsibility, take on some leadership, um, so that they don't feel like they're just kind of pushed out by this younger crew of kids. And so that's a big thing. I mentioned a lot of the kids go to a private Christian school that's close, and so you kind of have that going on already. They're kind of already a part of that community. And so there's a lot of overlap there. And so again, just trying to figure out how do we do our thing here, and have kids have some buy-in and ownership and consistency. And yeah, and then I'm always very cognizant of what you said in terms of the statistics of kids getting to be 16, 17, 18 years old, and not being around as much. And I saw that within my youth group coming through high school as well. And so that's always kind of in the back of my mind is like, how can we create a culture here? How can we implement things? I'm a huge fan in youth ministry of having kind of steps that you take. So there, there are things that are available to everyone, then there are things that are available to senior high, and there are things that are available for seniors, or however you want to do that. But it always kind of keeps something coming down the line, rather than by the time you're in 12th grade, you've done everything 6 times, and it's just like
Yeah.
there's not a lot of appeal there. So, but at the root of that is trying to connect people with the gospel, connect kids with the gospel in a way that is real, in a way that isn't shallow and exterior. But I always talk about youth ministry it's about building a foundation for kids. And so some of that is dealing with what they're going through now and helping them to deal with that. But part of it is also preparing them for when they graduate. And that was my issue. I was not ready for that whenever I left high school and went to college. And so looking at it and going, okay, how can we have kids be able to stand firm in their faith where they are right now, so that when they are going to new communities, that's just a part of who they are. It's not something that they have to figure out. They already kind of have that part down, and can see God in those experiences as well.
Well, the opportunity to serve and lead is, I think, huge. And what we're trying to do is disciple that 16 and up,
Yeah.
and kind of try to welcome them into what the adult guys are doing.
Yeah.
While
Yeah, that's great.
they're in that interim, like while they're still going to youth, we're trying to take them fishing, or invite them to the next men's deal that we're doing. Because I think that's huge. Like when I was a kid, I didn't want to hear what my dad had to say, but like his buddies were pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, I mean, I'm 40. I don't know how old you are, but like there's not like a bunch of 60, 70-year-old boomers at church like pouring into me. I don't see that, and everybody, we're all kind of the same age that are involved. And
Yeah.
I don't want that for the 18-year-olds. I don't want them to look back and go, I'm 40,
Yeah.
and like I'm the leader, I mean,
Oh yeah.
not that I don't want to be a leader. I just, you know, I think, have you read David Murrow's book, Why Men Hate Going to Church?
No.
It's a great book. And he's got a thing, I think it's free. It's called Man Time. He's got this little
Okay.
It's pretty cool. You got to look in. It's like a
Yeah,
little
I'll have to
1
check
minute
that out.
video, and it's a parable, not biblical, but like they wrote parables, and then you have group discussion. The questions are solid. We didn't have anybody that didn't like it, which is weird to have a bunch of men get together and be like, that was good,
Yeah. Yeah.
But he outlines a lot of trouble in that book that I think the church is seeing. And what we're seeing here is attendance is way up. I think the pendulum swung. I think, like Pat said, or one of our other guests, Louis Blum, I think he said, like, the harvest is ripe.
Yeah.
Like
Definitely.
people are like searching, like, what's a good church to go to? We're seeing in our community posts on Facebook, like, I'm looking for a church that would accept me. I have tattoos, I mean, like everybody's trying to figure this out. And I think people are aware that whatever it is that we need, it's not what we've had for the last 15 years. You know what I mean? Like, I think people are waking up and going,
even 40
whoa.
years.
Yeah,
man.
sure.
Like I would even go back further and plumb into the 1940s.
Yeah. So I don't know. So it's like, we're just trying to be ready for that swing of people. But it's like, what are we going to have to offer them? And not in a consumerism aspect, but like what we've seen is when we serve, that's when we really get the good stuff. It's like,
for sure.
If the kids just come to youth and sit around,
right.
like
If they're just like a bump on a log,
But if they come in and we go, hey, 2 weeks from now, we want you to do a message on prayer, now they're like, now they're invested, you know?
And even like we have, I didn't go to it this past time, but we have a deal called Squirrel Camp. And so it's a youth thing, and our youth pastor is involved, but there's like a sign-up sheet that's always full of men who are wanting to go. We have a guy at our church that's got a big property, go shoot ski, go fishing, go ride jet skis, like all that kind of stuff. So I will say we're very blessed to have someone willing to invest in our program,
that's
but
awesome.
It's not like a program of like, all right, you have to pass this line and then you're considered a man.
You have to go to church with. I mean, we took like 17 to 22 They had a regulation arm wrestling table this
Yeah.
time. I mean, we
Like,
really just hang out with them for 24 hours. And some of
yeah,
the kids stayed up all night throwing
Yeah.
cast nets and fishing with
And
bait
the
fish.
the
And
crazy thing is that the men who are like our age are happy to be involved with it. I mean, if they've got the time off the work, and
yeah,
then they're willing to invest and serve. And it's been such a blessing to see men actually wanting to invest in. And I got to say, like, we've got some pretty freaking awesome kids. Like, it's mostly boys. I will say, like, it is probably what, 75% boys, probably even more, honestly.
at squirrel camp, it was 100%.
Yeah, squirrel camp is 100% boy, but we have men who are hungry to invest in people because we know what it was like being that age.
yeah,
We remember, like, I know my youth growing up, like, our pastor was one of the youngest men in the church, and he was in his 50s.
yeah,
Like, he was it was a congregation of a lot of older people, and again, nothing wrong with that, but it is definitely harder whenever you've got people that are more towards the end of their life, just trying to, maintain their life and their family and everything like that. And then you've got all these youth coming up who are just confused, have no idea what's going on.
Well, like it should be attractive. Like,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
Stack, we
yeah,
had Stack on and he said, I don't judge anybody, but I'm a fruit inspector, and
sure.
um, I heard somebody talk about, it's not the watering system, it's not like watering and cutting your grass that matters, right? It's not checking the boxes. It's like, are you growing fruit?
Yeah.
And so we want people to be attracted and want to come. We don't spend a lot of promotional time. We don't advertise. We
No.
don't beat people
Yeah,
up about it.
that's something that I've been intentional about, specifically with the youth stuff. That it's like I want it to be attractive. I want people to want to be there. I'm also not going to beg you to be there. So, and so I'm not doing the like, I, I'm not doing the like, hey, we're gonna, bring your
Have a pizza
next week.
party
We're
every
gonna, whatever.
Wednesday.
Like my thought process is, if kids enjoy coming and they enjoy being there, and we are, they are getting what they need from that, then maybe that comes down the line. Then maybe they're bringing people because of that, because they are enjoying it. Um, but yeah, and I think there's something about that too, in terms just the relational thing, where like I think I'm just now getting to a point. I've been at the church for a year and a half, where like I've built some of those relationships to the point that those things matter a lot more.
Well, it
So
takes
like,
2 years for
Yeah.
anybody to
We've
be in a community.
That's
and
kind of what we've
develop
seen. It takes
that.
about 2
Yeah.
years, to develop that. And the other thing we've noticed, and I've heard Travis say this a bunch of times, if junior and senior boys think it's cool and want to be there, everybody else will be there. The girls will be
Yeah.
there, the younger boys will be there. And it's like that's the target. It's like
Yeah.
if we can get the 17, 18-year-old guys to not think this is gay, or I mean, probably shouldn't have said that. You know what I mean?
no, I
90s
got
gay,
you.
90s gay, not really gay.
No, I got you.
90s gay.
90s game.
If the junior and senior boys think it's cool, like
Yeah.
legitimately cool,
Yeah.
then like you'll have strong people. They'll come.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and I think I forget where this quote is from, but it's something to the effect of, women often will connect face to face, and men will connect shoulder to shoulder.
Yep.
Doing things
I
together.
like that.
Yeah, that was really
And I think that that's true with youth too. Like I think that our this season, the church that I'm at resurrected their church softball team. And so I've been doing that. We're only a few games in, but I'm recognizing, like, there are some youth that play, and so I'm recognizing that it's like it's a really cool opportunity to be with them and doing something with them outside of the kind of the youth ministry umbrella. And so, just things like that, and things like I love going to like any of the like sporting events that they're involved in, and things like that, and allowing those things and some people are really good at going in, and they can build those relationships super fast and whatever. like for me, it's more of I just want that stuff to happen naturally so that,
Organic. Yeah.
yeah, so that whenever there is a junior guy, senior guy, whoever, that I'm like, hey, let's, we start getting coffee once a month or once a week or whatever, then that feels like a natural thing. It's not like just this guy that is trying to check a box of like, I want to make sure that we're actually doing this. Um, and so, yeah, trying to come up with those things where it's like, okay, Sunday nights is great. We're enjoying that. What are some things outside of that that we can do? Get other church people involved, all of those kinds of things to make sure, again, that we're building that community in, that it's not just Youth Island doing their own thing on their own, out by
Yeah.
themselves,
Mhm.
but that we're, that the youth ministry is a microcosm of, the community as a whole at the church.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like the more and more like I saw it. One of the churches that I was involved with years ago, they started a young adults team or young adults ministry, and like they asked me to help out with it. I was a young adult, but I was one of the oldest young adults,
Sure.
and I was like, dude, just tell them to get involved with church. Like, there's so many opportunities in this church to serve, so many things to do. And there's nothing wrong with just going into big church
Yeah.
and just sitting there, learning the word, coming in, like talk to your people, whatever, and then learning with the congregation.
Yeah.
Because like it feels like there's and there was a lot of people who were just like, I don't ever want to leave youth, big church is so scary, blah blah blah. And it's like, come on, man, like you gotta stretch your legs. You gotta move forward because you can't just be in that mentality of I'm gonna start a church that just looks like a youth ministry because like what happens to the people that have kids? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like what happens to the people who are at a different stage in life?
That's funny. I mean, like I grew up with Green Acres, and
Mhm.
and there was Sunday school from babies all the way through college.
Yeah.
And like here, it's like once you graduate fifth grade, you're done. You just go
Yeah,
downstairs,
you just
It's
go
like
into the church like and I love that. That's one of my favorite things about our church is that and Travis doesn't really pull punches. Like he's not one that is like we're not going to talk about this subject because we have small ears. Like you get an opportunity to have a discussion with your kids if they want to discuss it anymore,
Yeah.
and I think that's really important for those methods of learning to kind of conjoin at the same time and be like, hey, what did you think about that sermon?
Yeah.
And have your child respond like, I don't know, I wasn't really listening, or go into detail about what it was. That's and it's you're getting to stretch your legs in that,
Yeah, for sure.
and I think there's such a disconnect um, from the people who once they get out of youth, they're like, nah, nah, I'm done with the whole church thing because they couldn't cater to me. They couldn't cater to my
yeah,
ideas.
creates like
And
consumerism,
yeah, it really
Yeah,
does.
for
And,
sure. And
and
yeah. Yeah, and I think I think that's a huge, it's definitely a symptom of kind of having youth completely on their own. Like
Mhm.
if they're leaving youth group and then feel like there's nothing for them at the church, then that means I don't want to put it on them, but there have not been relationships built outside of the youth ministry.
exactly. Yeah.
So, and I do think that's a huge, I mean, that is a massive, it's a super important time, because
Hmm.
it is kind of that in between, where it's like, well, I don't feel like I belong here, but I don't feel like I belong with all the quote unquote adults. And so if some of those relationships are built already, then that is more of a seamless, transition. And you can still, like, our church does have like a young adults thing where they get together, there's stuff that they do together, but that's not like in place of other things. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
more
yeah.
like a men's ministry, women's ministry, youth ministry, whatever.
Yeah, we get together on Thursday nights. Everybody else gets together on Wednesday nights. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So it's not in play. So it's one of those things that I think can be done really poorly. But also, you know, and I think that it's like that for anything. I mean, you could say that about youth ministry. You could say that about any of those things, that if you're putting, and that's something that I love about the church that I'm at, is like, it is all based around the community and learn, you know, so in our service, we don't have, you know, there's no like children's church. There's like everyone's in together for the, you know, the entire time. Similar to what you were saying, where it's like we're all going to be learning together. We're going to be worshiping together. We're going to be learning what that means. You know, why do we sing together? Why do we do, you know, all of these other things together? And so not making it, you know, not making it so that you, there are a lot of churches out there where you can show up on a Sunday morning to check the box of being there. No one knows you were there, but you can say you were there, you know, and that's attractive to people sometimes. But I appreciate it. It sounds like you guys are similar, where it's like, no, if you're going to be here consistently, then we're gonna know each other, and we want to
Yeah,
know you, and we want to be invested,
yeah,
and so that comes with all of the great stuff of doing these things together. That also comes with the, you know, if there's something wrong or something, you know, if someone's messed up or whatever, like we're gonna deal with that too, because that's a part of what this is.
Yeah, we're
um
not going to tell them, hey, we don't talk about that here. Get out of
right.
here, you know?
Yeah.
yeah.
And it took me 36 years or something to find a couple of churches that would just have me in the way I was, you know?
Yeah.
So, hey, is there anything that we're missing or that we haven't asked about or that you want to talk about? You know,
Oh man. Uh, I mean, I don't think so. There isn't anything that I came in thinking like, oh, we need to make sure that we touch on this. Um, you know, I think for me, you know, obviously, and the way I got connected with you guys was through the social media stuff. And I guess I, I, I guess what I would say is, getting back to that and kind of finishing that off, is that people just need to be careful with that,
Yeah.
you know, with that kind of stuff. And I was just actually messaging with the Lord's Giant. We talked about him
Mm.
before I came on, but you know, and we were talking about the idea of doing ministry through something, and something being your ministry. And I think that
Yeah,
those lines get blurred a lot of times, where it's like, yes, I am fully aware and want to be able to minister to people through social media. Social media is not my ministry.
right.
And I would even, outside of a very like a few exceptions that I could think of, I would say that that's not a ministry. Like that's, you know, there are people that legitimately are, you know, Christian creators on social media, that it's like they are serving as like people's pastor through social media,
Yeah, yeah.
and marketing themselves that way, you know.
Mhm.
And so I guess that, you know, people are really really good at saying things that trigger a response, or appealing to emotions, and you know, and things like that. And I would just say that social media can be a great thing even under the Christian umbrella, but it should never be replacing a local church or a local community. And part of that is because what comes with, ideally, what comes with church membership and being a part of that community, is that there is accountability there.
Yeah, that's a
And I
huge thing with the local
Yeah,
church.
and social, and what social media does, or online church, or you know, how whatever you want to, whatever realm you want to get into, is it allows you to consume the things that you want to consume without any of the ramifications of uh you know, poor decision making, or
Absolutely.
not, you know, not doing the things that you need to do. And I think with the rise of social media, that has become really appealing to people. And there are a lot of people out there that then will appeal to those people, and kind of bring them into what they have going on, that I would say is at the heart of it is very self-seeking. And so yeah, like I mean, as someone who creates content, please continue to watch it and consume it. And I love
Yeah.
that. And I love the people that I'm able to interact with on there, but never allow that to, take the place of what should be happening locally and in your just in your day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Because it
Because
it can't replace it.
I know people who like have stepped away from church, from like the non-traditional church. Like they're
Yeah.
like, I don't agree with everything that the Bible says, and they think like Billy Carson is a Bible scholar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm just like, I remember when Billy Carson was first coming out, people were sending me his stuff and everything, and I was like, dude, this is straight up lies from the pits of hell. Like this dude
Yeah.
does not know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And it's just regurgitation of something that somebody said 70 to 100 years ago. But
Oh yeah.
now you've got a camera in front of you and an entire world of people who are watching that, whatever you put on that camera.
Yeah.
And it's something where like when the you start to actually apply these life philosophies to your own life, and then you start to see like the wreckage that really happens, and it doesn't always look like wreckage. Like it
Oh no.
doesn't always look ugly. Like it's
No.
something that can actually be very attractive and very freeing even. But the reality is like you can't separate Jesus from his word, and you can't separate um ourselves from our own hearts and the things that we want to go into, the things that we want to latch onto whenever we
Yep.
learn about something. Because like there's things that are in the Bible that are tough to chew. I mean, even the people of Jesus time was like, who can hear these things?
Yeah.
And then Jesus,
Yeah.
it was on their way out the door, and then Jesus looked at the disciples and like, what, are y'all gonna leave too? Like,
Yeah, and to your point, it's one of my favorite passages because that comes, if I remember correctly, that comes at the end of John 6,
mhm,
which is just I mean, you could preach for a year just on that chapter, but the response to that is something that I always remember, in that, when Jesus says, "Are you going to leave too?" And I actually did a sermon that would this was the main point of it. That Peter looks at him and says, "Where are we going to go?"
yeah,
You know, and
where else? You're the
where,
guy.
yeah, you have the words of eternal life, is
Yeah,
is what he says. And what's important to recognize there is that Peter doesn't look at him and say, "No, we totally get it.
yeah,
Like, yeah,
yeah,
we're not going anywhere because
yeah,
we get what you're saying."
yeah,
He had just said a bunch of stuff that was incredibly confusing to people. That's why they left. But Peter's response is, "Where else are we going to go?" Not,
mhm,
and so I think that's so important, especially when you do come across creators or pastors or whoever it is that pretty much claim like, "Yeah, I got all of it. I completely understand
right,
everything in here." Um, and but also, if you are struggling with things, and this is something that I run into on social media all the time, is that people are so frustrated and confused because they can't understand something in scripture. And like, yes, continue to study it, but also recognize that it may not be for us to know. Like
mhm,
that's what, when we talk about faith, that's what we're talking about. And so, but also recognizing that if our relationship with Jesus is where it should be, then our response is, where just because this is confusing to me doesn't mean
right,
I'm going anywhere.
yeah,
So yeah, to your point, that's great. That's one of my favorite passages.
yeah. Um, I had a couple of thoughts in my mind. You being a Bible teacher,
Yeah.
right? Who are some teachers that you recommend?
Oh man, that's a good question. I already gave you the book recommendation, in terms of authors. Rebecca McLaughlin stuff is really good.
Who is that? I'm trying to play. It sounds so
So
familiar.
I wish legitimately I'm trying to remember what kind of her backstory is.
Sarah McLachlan's sister.
Yeah, not say
In
I've
the
called her.
arms
Yeah,
of
That's where okay, that's
I've
where
called
it
her
starts.
Sarah McLachlan numerous times. But actually, in the book, and we won't go down this whole path, but in the book, she talks about this, and it's really cool to to hear her use her own testimony. But she was someone that had romantic relationships with women in the past, dealt with all of that, and the story of kind of how she wrestled with that and came to where she is now, is really great. Another one that is a local guy. That's how I know him. I think he has a fairly good YouTube following. A guy named Matthew Everhard,
Mm.
who is he's written a couple things. We just used a book of his for Sunday school called Worshiptainment, and
Oh,
it's all
worshiptainment.
on.
That's
It's really looking at kind of the reformed view of Sunday morning worship, which it like, but it gets into music, but also just kind of the liturgy and the all the things that should be included, what should be included. And it's a even if you are not reformed, traditional, how whatever you want to call it, it's a really good look at an understanding of how we look at those things. And I think even if people disagree with the stuff in the book, I think it would get them thinking about some of those things. And he does it in a really cool way where each chapter is on a different portion of the service, but he starts it by an example, using an example of something that another church did that is just completely like ridiculous. Like,
yeah.
at one point he talked about and I'm sure you've seen clips from like some of the like stage plays that churches will do,
Oh my
and he talked
gosh.
about like the one where like I think it was like Batman gets crucified and so, it's just like all of this stuff. So he's great and he has great stuff on YouTube as well. Um, Talking about theology. I mean, he's a Presbyterian guy, so that's where he's speaking the perspective he's speaking from, but a lot of just really good insight. Um, I'm trying to think of.
You listen to Alistair Begg.
I do act, yeah, that's so funny you said that. I actually we're going to be recognizing our seniors in church in a couple weeks, and I got them his daily devotional,
Yeah.
which I love. I've
You
used.
said you said you're a Presbyterian, and I was like,
Yeah,
old
yeah,
Begg.
Alistair Begg, I like a lot. I always say his name wrong. Vadi Bakum.
Bodie Buckham. Yeah.
Yeah, is another one that So there are a lot of those guys that are probably the more kind
Hmm.
of
Paul Washer and all
yeah,
them. Yeah.
that I think are solid. And even guys like I've used a lot of stuff from in the past. I've used a lot of stuff from like John Piper,
Mm.
um,
Oh yeah, I've got several
and
of his books.
there was another J.I. Packer
I
is
don't know
another one
that.
that I've used quite a bit.
John
Uh,
Eldridge. You read any
John
John
Eldridge.
Eldridge? Wild at Heart.
uh, I might have.
He did
I'm
the
not sure.
Wild at Heart.
Wild at Heart.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
Okay.
definitely familiar. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, with him. And I will give the answer that I always give with this, and I already kind of said this, but I get asked that question on social media quite a bit, like who should I be listening to?
Yeah.
And my number one answer is always a local pastor.
Yeah. That's what
Find
I was about to
find a
say.
local pastor. And
Because otherwise you get isolated. And
Yeah.
in my
yeah, and
head, I
then
sound a lot like God. And so if I'm listening to somebody that can't check, there's
yep,
no mirror here.
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
There's no
But
relationship. They don't
but
know me.
in that same vein too, like I also tell people be okay with and willing to listen to people that you disagree with.
Yeah.
And I think I think social media is great for that.
Yeah.
And not to go in and pick a fight, but like just to understand where other people are coming
Mhm.
from.
Mhm.
And there's definitely a tendency. This is a human tendency that we see within Christianity. It definitely bleeds into that where it's like, don't you, if if they're saying something that is incorrect, you should not be listening to them. Completely
Yeah.
block them out, completely, and that can get into the realm of like, don't ask questions, don't,
Right.
whatever, where it's like, no, we're setting people up for failure, if
Yeah.
we do that. And so I would say that too, not necessarily that you're like taking up large chunks of your day or you're listening to a bunch of podcasts from people that you disagree with, but
Mm.
when you come across it, like, be willing to hear it. And at the very least, it will help you kind of sharpen your own beliefs in how you
Mhm.
would, respond to that.
And
So
being able to check that, I think that the local pastor has such a heavy weight on his shoulders,
yeah,
especially when he's wrong. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, especially whenever he like says something from the pulpit that's completely unscriptural, and then like being able to recant it. Like,
yeah,
that takes some stones to be able to do, but I don't think that there's necessarily those types of things that a church needs to split over, that somebody needs
yeah,
to like leave the church. I think that those things are open for discussion, and that's where the relationship comes into it. Like, if you're going
yeah,
to a
for sure.
church where you're just basically listening to a podcast while you're just sitting there, and then you walk out and you don't have a relationship with your teacher who
Yeah,
you're learning from, then you're really doing yourself a disservice. And I get it. Like, listen, that not every pastor is able to take on friends, is able to take on every council meeting or anything like that. I don't
yeah,
want that to be assumed at all. But whenever you're listening to a local pastor, you're listening to someone who is within your context, who is
yes,
local to you, who
yeah,
who is paying the same bills that you're paying, voting for the same government as you, like everything. And I think it's more imperative now than ever for local pastors to be who God actually wants them to be for their congregation, and not
yeah,
just for their community. Like, not for everybody looking in, like from other business being like, oh yeah, this guy's really good, blah 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 blah. The reality is that we're supposed to be the pastor is supposed to be teaching the word, and that we who are under our local pastors are supposed to be teaching the word also, and
right,
having an understanding that not necessarily mirrors what our pastor is doing, but it does tend to reflect what's
sure,
going on. Like, you see a broken community, like when you said that you came to your church, and there was a good structure
yeah,
underneath it. Like, that's impressive, because not a
yeah,
lot
oh,
of
for sure,
not a lot of youth pastors get to come into a ministry that they're new to, and having that good structure. Usually the guy before has wrecked everything. Everything's
yeah,
on fire, and
yeah,
everything is a problem, and the youth pastor has to be the one to fix it. And that, going back to what we consider blessings,
yeah,
that's a huge blessing for you.
yeah,
Like it's not like God like called a church and said, all right, write John a check for $1 million. And yeah, look, that would have been nice, right? But the real blessing is getting to see the work in the soil that God has really cultivated before
yeah,
you came along,
100%.
and able to move forward in that.
Yeah,
So people don't realize how important the local church really
yeah.
is.
Yeah, and there's one thing that you said in there that I want to just kind of go off of, in terms of the pastor, um, maybe not having a lot of time for friends or not having friends or whatever. I would say, this is another thing that I think people should hear, like, check in on your pastor. Check in on your pastor, youth pastor, the people that are in full-time ministry, um, because it can be very isolating.
Yeah.
Um, and and I've seen that as well, where and I've seen the ramifications of that. Where the pastor just didn't really have any close relationships with people. And because it's difficult to do. I recognize that even as a stepping into this position, one thing that I hadn't really considered is like it changes the conversations that I have with people. if I'm having a conversation with a guy from my church, even if it is on a peer level or a friend level, there's
Yeah.
also a sense in which, oh, I'm also your child's youth director, and you are the parent of one of my students, and so there's always that kind of, I don't want to say hanging over, because it's not always a negative thing. But it can be difficult when you are in ministry like that. I think especially for pastors, that it feels like it's difficult for them to really be themselves all the time. And so if you're able to create, a space for your pastor to do that, or to be able to come alongside him and, and spend time with him, even if it's going and doing something, then that goes a long way.
I'm leaving Sunday. My wife and I are leaving with, I don't know, 5 or 6 other couples from church, including our pastor and his wife, to go canoe down a river for a few
Yeah, that's
days.
awesome.
Y'all are gonna have so
Um,
much fun.
But it's supposed to rain every day.
Well, it's still gonna be fun.
So we may not go there. We may,
okay.
I don't know.
Might be something else.
Arkansas might not be the destination, but
Yeah.
I would say that I agree with everything you said on that point. And I think that having expectations of a church or a leadership or a denomination is crazy, because we're people and we're the ones that
Yeah.
messed up this whole deal anyway.
Absolutely.
Right.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Like, I almost want to just say, like, I'm trying to follow Jesus. I don't sometimes, like, even say I'm a Christian, feels, because I get put in that box. And, like,
Sure.
I think to book into this deal, you started off talking about, well, if you close your eyes and, like, what does a pastor, what does a Christian look like?
Yeah.
I used to do that. I mean, I went to school to be a counselor, and specifically for drug and alcohol stuff, and because that's part of my story. But I used to have people come into that relationship, whether it was a detox or a treatment facility, inpatient, outpatient, and they would go, "Well, I don't have a problem," and I would say,
Mhm.
"Okay, cool, I get it, right? Like, close your eyes." Like, I was 18 when I got clean, so I didn't have a lot in common. I didn't lose multiple marriages and houses and cars and careers. I didn't,
Mm.
like, my bottom wasn't like homeless on the street. But,
Sure.
when people would come in and they were holding on to a little bit of success, I would say, well, just close your eyes and picture what an addict or an alcoholic looks like. And, they would be homeless, living in a cardboard box, track marks on their arms, beard, messy hair, and it blew my mind. And then later I got into the insurance and financial business,
Mm.
and I looked more like you. I had a full beard, hair down to here, tattoos. I was like the most tattooed person in the Dallas office. And um and I thought, well, I'm gonna have to cut my hair and shave
Mm.
and wear long sleeve shirts, because that's what they wanted me to do when I was a counselor, because I was so young. And it's interesting. They thought, well, this is a niche market. Maybe, you'll get in with the bikers and stuff. I'm like, unfortunately, bikers, though they may need life insurance, they're not going to buy
Yeah.
it because they're
Not real
pretty
big on it. Yeah.
impulsive, right?
Right.
But I did the same thing with myself. It's like I closed my eyes and I thought, okay, what's a financial advisor look like?
Mm.
What's a doctor look like? I used to do that to people that were just like, I'm not an addict. Like, close your eyes. White, Indian, or Asian male,
Yeah.
white lab coat, stethoscope. Like, everybody knows in their mind, if they close their eyes, what a doctor looks like. And for an insurance guy, like, there's a stereotype there too.
Oh, sure.
I appreciate that you don't fit the stereotype,
Mm.
because the stereotype's not attractive,
Yeah.
to me. And I think probably to a lot of people. I spoke
Most
with a
people.
woman at church a couple weeks ago, and she said, when I started coming here, I brought my mom. And my mom was like, "Who's that guy baptizing those people wearing flip-flops and shorts?" And she was like, "The pastor." And she was like, "I can't come here,"
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I think she comes now. It's hilarious to
Yeah.
me, but just that idea of, like, well, I'm going to put you in a box because of what you look like, what you
Yeah.
sound like, um, who you associate with, who you identify with. And I want to be real careful. Like, the whole purpose of this podcast is to allow people a platform to tell their testimony and to
Mm.
get that out there. And I think
Yeah.
everybody's story is, we just heard a sermon Sunday on personal testimony, which is
I
hilarious.
wasn't there. I was
Oh,
there
you did,
Sunday.
you were at a competition. He won first place in a taxidermy competition,
Whoa,
which
Yeah.
is
that's
cool.
incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just wild. I mean, like, how long you been doing it?
Since July of last year.
Yeah,
Wow.
so there you go.
Yeah.
So he's
That's
just
so awesome.
Yeah.
But,
I'm
I
about
love
to
that.
be, I'm just gonna brag a little bit. I'm about to be buying the business that I actually
Yeah.
manage now. So
Wow.
yeah, I'm very, very
I think
excited.
God's really putting some stuff on you there.
Yeah, man.
That's so cool.
But you know, the
Love that.
idea of personal ministry,
Yeah.
this is that, or personal testimony. You know, we want to give people an opportunity to give that, because I like to look for the similarities, not the differences, you
Yeah.
know, because anybody can listen to one account or meet somebody and go, I'm nothing like them. What we found with our men's ministry is different as all the guys are. Like, you would think the first 10 minutes that they get there, none of these guys would, if they walked into a bar, a country club, a restaurant, they would not sit next to each other.
Yeah.
And by the end of that 24-hour period, they're like, man, that guy's just like me. 70-year-old, no tattoos, you know,
Yeah.
lawyer, and a 22-year-old with tattoos on his neck and face, you know, and they're sitting down, they're like, man, you know,
I
call
get
me
it.
if you need something, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Yeah.
and so
Well, yeah, I think, you know, and I'm sure you guys have touched on this, you know, but there is that the thing that we have in common is that we've been brought from death to life. And
Yes.
I think that, you know, that is the narrative throughout, whether you are someone who, you know, grew up in the church like I did, you know, don't really remember a day that you weren't hearing about Jesus, or someone that came to Christ when you were 50 after, you know, a lifetime of, you know, whatever, is that one of those is not more powerful than the other. Like they are the same story. And it isn't about the people involved. It is about what God has done, you know, for these people and for us. And so I think that that's why, you know, you can find that common ground, is that we are living the human experience of, you know, recognizing who we are in front of a sovereign God. And, you know, there are a lot of different, there are plenty of differences to find, you know, and that's a beautiful thing. But there's that thread, you know, that connects all of us. And so, yeah, so I appreciate that. It made me think of, I just got a comment recently on a video, and someone said, "You're the first reformed guy that I've seen smile on here," which isn't true, like, at all. But there is a part of that, like, that is a
Yeah.
flag that I carry. That it's like, you know, because I do not fit in to my, you know, stereotypically, I do not fit into my denomination. Like,
Right. Yeah. Same. Yeah.
I'm not an academic. I'm not, you know, but I also then see my place within that, where it's like, okay, there is this really deep theological truth that is super important. But if we can't, and I've used this word a few times, I use it a lot, if we can't make that approachable and practical, then it doesn't mean anything, you know? And so
It just dies.
right. And so
Yeah.
that, you know, just to your point, I think that there even, you know, within the larger body of Christ, that, you know, we all have roles to play in that, and we are all connected because of Jesus, you know, and that's just it's a beautiful thing.
yeah, our identity comes from that,
Yeah.
you know. So
Well, is there anything else that you want to share? Like, I mean, we're pretty well about to wrap it up. We've got what, like 2
2 hours,
2
10
hours
minutes.
and 2
Yeah,
minutes
man.
worth of stuff.
That's
So
awesome.
it's been
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything else.
any hot takes, like real
Oh,
quick.
geez. I could, yeah, I mean, there are plenty. I feel like I'm going to open up a whole other can of
Oh
worms,
yeah. Yeah.
with those types of things.
Well,
But
if you want to make the hot takes for the what's it called? For the Thunderbolts.
yeah, I'll give you one. I'll give you one. I don't know if this is a hot take, but let me give you a few. Like, we didn't even get really into music at all.
Yeah.
that I love. But let me just give you a few, because people ask me about recommendations all the time, and things that are maybe a little more off the beaten path. So, uh, group called My Epic, which is a rock band, harder rock band. I think are the greatest, the best
Theologians
lyricists.
out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
best lyricists in Christian music. They have a song called Alone that is it's a more acoustic stuff, but I recommend that to everyone. So them, and then I'm also a huge Christian hip hop guy
Yeah.
too. So there's a group of guys right now called Indie Tribe that are that made up of some really, No Big Deal is in that group. He's incredible on his own too. But so I'll throw those out there because I'm always trying to get people to find good music with good lyrics that aren't marketed to soccer moms. Uh, which
Yeah.
there's a lot of Christian music out there that is. So
Well,
there's some really solid stuff out there.
well, this has been a wonderful episode. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate you
your
guys. I
ministry,
appreciate
too.
what you're doing, and this was a great conversation. So I appreciate it.
Right on, man. Well, thank you again. This has been another episode of Two Dudes, One God Pod. Pat and I are out. Go check out John the Messenger.
Yeah.
Send him money on his PayPal.
Yeah.
That's why it's there.
That's right.
All right, brother.
Take it easy, brother.
Have a good
Yeah.
one.
Be safe.